Welcome.
Thank you.
Good.
Hi.
Clifton, Victoria, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having us, Atlas.
Yeah, we're excited.
So pumped. So pumped. For your first podcast appearance also, which is exciting.
Yeah, it's a special one. Very happy that it's with you.
Likewise. Likewise. And I'm really pumped that because Coda was staying here that we got introduced and we just vibed really strongly, and now we are doing a show together.
Yeah, let's see what we can co-create.
Yeah, and super grateful for Coda for making it happen, making the introduction.
Exactly. And Faces of the Future is... It's exciting because it's so deeply rooted in this conscious awakening that the collective is undergoing. And I'm excited for you guys to share more about both Faces of the Future as an actual program and community, and also for us to sort of talk about what that process looks like. In one of the core elements that we talked about, and that's really familiar to people, is that there seems to be this very tight feedback loop between the inner and the outer, and consciousness being inextricable from physicalism or materialism. And there's always these unique little patterns that we can detect that if we shine the light of awareness on them, we can gain more insight and transparency into them and purify our behavior to come more and more from oneness and wholeness rather than from lack and separation and conditioning and all this type of stuff. So let's have you guys speak about that, both in your own journeys as well as in what you're serving people with.
It's quite a start, quite an open question, and
Always.
I'd love to invite Victoria to kind of share a bit about her journey.
Yeah, so we're Faces of the Future. We are a startup studio with a personal development platform that's focused on conscious awakening. And how I started with this work, I guess you want to hear the backstory or a bit about what we do first?
Yes.
Yes, both. Okay. So Clifton and I met in 2016 at a biotech networking event. I was working as a nurse at the time at NYU, and Clifton was getting his MBA from Columbia University. And I was wanting to leave my job as a nurse. I wanted to start my own business. And I was also going on this kind of awakening journey. I had just been in a car accident, and it set me on a path of being more present, more aware in my body, and seeing how empathic I actually was with the patients, all the energies I was picking up in the hospital. And that was the first time I was really able to sit and be present with myself, feel the pain in my body, the suffering that I've been carrying for so many years. I was able to look deeper and start to do some of that emotional and spiritual work. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey since 2016. We didn't... Do you want to chime in?
Sure, yeah.
Sure.
And meanwhile, I guess as Victoria was looking inner, I was looking outer. So business school, I was looking at venture capital. Right after we met, I was flying to Saudi Arabia for a Miss Global Forum. So I was getting really macro, looking at trends. And I grew up around newspapers in a newspaper family, and kind of was awakened to what happens behind the scenes and how certain things aren't necessarily as they seem, for headlines and whatnot. And so I was starting to not be able to forget the truth of what I'm seeing on the macro scale. And so I chose entrepreneurship and venture capital as a form of pursuing truth in terms of co-creating the future. And I could see that while the ideas were great, the execution and the culture of a lot of these companies and funds were not necessarily in alignment with a lot of the missions that were being said. So that's kind of how we joined on the inner to the outers. I was looking on the outer, and she was doing an inner journey.
Yes.
And it took about 3 years after that for us to reconnect, in which case I had started to do a major inner work with a startup that combined different modalities of healing. And that's when we reconnected and really started to sync up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started going more and more integrative and holistic over time, really Western medicine at first, wanting to help people, seeing how it wasn't serving people in the way I wanted to. And then started exploring things like aromatherapy first, and then Reiki, doing energetic practices, really feeling the depths of people that aren't visible to the naked eye, but things we perceive vibrationally about people. Honing in on all those feelings that I was coming home with from the hospital. I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot.
And in the holistic company, for me, what I was ending up doing was running myself into the ground, nearly having a heart attack with all the pressure, the stress, and my work-life balance or lack thereof. And something just wasn't clicking. It's like, okay, if I'm creating a company all about health and wellness, and the people who are building it aren't healthy and are unable to navigate the journey to create something that brings health, then there's something intrinsically flawed in how I'm approaching it. And so that's when I began to search internally and switch from an external focus to an internal focus, and really did a deep dive into the spiritual side of reality. And that led me to India, to seeing a lot of unique powers of the third eye that are becoming more and more popular, such as body scanning, blindfold reading, Akashic readings, things like that. And I came back from that trip to India, and that's when Victoria and I actually reconnected, because I was in a 21-day program and was practicing manifesting the powers of the third eye, which is body scanning and then Akashic readings. And so I was there having to do it 21 times in 24 hours, and I'm trying to figure out who's awake at this time, and I'm on the West Coast, and I see Victoria.
And who wants to awaken?
Yeah, and Victoria, yeah, literally, who's awake or who wants to awaken. That's a good one. I like that. And Victoria was there, and I was like, I don't really know if she'll respond, but she had responded favorably to something I sent about astrology. And so she was on Facebook Messenger, and I just messaged her, hey, do you want an Akashic reading? And she said yes.
And I was in a space where I was really looking for my purpose, my dharma. I knew what wasn't for me. I knew all the things that I was not, but I didn't know who I was, what I was looking for, what lit me up about life, what my heart connected to, where was my heart even. And I, did the Reiki training, did the Burning Man kind of thing. And then when Clifton and I reconnected, the last time I touched base with him, he was like really in the business world and not super tapped in yet. It was what I would say, like emotionally or spiritually. And at that point, when he was going through this program, I'm like, so I'd been journeying inward slowly and steadily. And like, what did he do? What is this that just made him take a quantum leap in his level of spirituality and understanding of the world? So I wanted to know more.
Yeah, and so we connected, and each time I was expressing through me the Akashic records and seeing where there were triggers or traumas. And I had put all of my eggs in the spiritual basket and completely neglected the physical reality. So the needs that I have of like connection, sustenance, movement, the reality of living in a place where we do
exchange currency.
Exchange currency, and there is a need for that. And so my journey with Victoria actually was starting to bring back those spiritual gifts into a form and a context that the current reality can hold. And more importantly, what I found was the more that I did work on myself, the more I was able to stay in both places, or to utilize the skill in a way that would help others and serve them in a better way. I started with channeling, Hindu deities, which is really, really incredible. But the applicability of the messages, it wasn't being followed through on. So that wasn't a key force multiplier.
There's no integration.
There was no integration. Sometimes there was no acceptance of what was being said. And sometimes it was just too macro on what to do. But certain questions around business, because I have a CPA background and an MBA, I was able to give extremely explicit guidance, and that seemed to get a lot of traction. But at that point, I still had yet to understand or even know about emotions. So at an early age, I shut down emotions. And so when people said they felt, something in their heart, like a heartache, I just thought that was a figure of speech. I didn't actually know that was a feeling in the heart. And so I had to undergo an emotional awakening after that spiritual awakening. And through the culmination and work with Victoria, actually really helping ground it and bringing the nurturing and the emotional intelligence, we formed what is Faces of the Future.
And I had emotional intelligence about other people, not about myself, because of the poor boundary structure, not understanding what's mine, what's not mine. And that's a topic that's tricky in spirituality. It's like oneness versus how do we set up healthy boundaries with the oneness as well.
Yeah. And you were emotionally sensitive. And there were things that I thought were private, like in terms of my thought and my energy, that were more not non-obvious. But because she was highly sensate and she could feel it, she could actually know what energy I was sending out to people, which got me into trouble.
Which didn't match the words sometimes.
Yeah, a few times. And so then it was really like, whoa, this is like full multidimensional integrity right here. So let's explore that.
Nice. It's pretty exciting hearing about all of the ways that we transition from mainstream society, separation, ego, to this turn inward that then becomes infused in everything we express outward. So another good one to ask you guys about would be, so now that you've went through these journeys, how do you then distill the essence of what you've understood into the Faces of the Future curricula, and then take people through it? And what does that process look like?
Yeah, I'd say the best view of it is it's an emergent property. So it's constantly evolving. And each person's essence, if you imagine going through the process, and we're a filter, we filter people's essence. And so it's going to be different each time. And it informs us, like the order of operation of our clients is actually a divinely guided thing, because we're becoming more sophisticated every time someone goes through the process, we're upgrading our algorithm, so to speak, of what that process looks like. And
I would say that the process came as a download or pieces of downloads that we intellectually, mentally grasped what it was. And as we were doing it, and as we went through our own journeys and had the embodied understanding, we're like, oh, that's why this works, or that's why that's a thing. And things that we were discovering, what we saw, that we then encountered in like Joe Dispenza's work in the quantum manifestation principles. We encountered it in psychology with needs and boundaries and feelings and attachment style. It's like, it's a full spectrum 360 holistic view of who you are as a human in totality, how to find your center, how to find your heart. What does the heart want? Let's decondition that personality that was formed from the tribal nature of society, because we get programmed by our parents and our upbringing, and we evolve certain patterns of behavior. That tape player, that theta brainwave recording state is going for the first 7 years of life, and we don't know what's a good program, what's not a good program. It serves us in the beginning, but then after a while you see it's no longer to your benefit, and it doesn't keep you safe anymore. It actually hinders you from moving any further. So deconditioning that personality that helped you get love, security, and acceptance in the first 7 years of life in your tribe, in your family, the family of origin, to understanding your individuality. I think it was Edward Casey who used the two terms where I heard it, and finding the unique essence, the oneness, the core fractal of who you are and what you stand for, what lights you up, what excites you.
Yeah, and another way of saying it is bringing it back to the embodiment. We help people tap into their heart and repair it and amplify its guidance system in another metaphor. Because in those first 7 years, you learn, you adopt certain beliefs to survive in your household. Like, why do we do this? Well, that's the way it's done. That's how you learn to be a part of the family. And so after that deprogramming, or through the process of living that programming, you may have had some traumas or issues where you shut down access to your heart in order to survive. And so then the next step is to actually tap into the heart, repair it, and repair your ability to navigate in the present moment from an integrated heart, brain, spirit coherence, which people come with various levels of integration and sophistication. And we really love the four wheels tire that one of our mentors, Dr. Brian Malandine, talked about, which is, imagine you as a being have four tires: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical.
To power your vehicle.
And if you have an overinflated tire, you're not going to drive smoothly. And that's exactly what happened to me. I put it all in physical and mental, and then realized I was completely missing spiritual. So I threw everything out, jumped on the spiritual tire, and of course there were problems with that. And then all of a sudden I realized there was an emotional tire. And so making sure that each tire is balanced is a really important aspect of navigating, because you're just going to keep having to learn certain things in life that are going to manifest for you to learn to inflate that specific tire. And what was happening was I was doing a lot of spiritual bypassing. So I was leaning into my spiritual abilities, which in many cases bring awe and wonder, like, whoa, you can do that, to bypass certain needs of mine, to bypass certain emotional intelligence that I needed to learn in order to move forward. And I find that in a lot of clients and a lot of technology embedded individuals, is that they're wanting to bring forth a certain type of society without necessarily making sure that their navigation system is aligned, and that their tires are all adequately pumped up.
Like not overcompensating with your strength and comfort zone, and pouring and sublimating all the energy towards that tire. You're saying. And
structurally, I mean, we've had like areas of focus in order to expand society. So we go deep in one area, but what we're seeing is that, especially for the next generation and the bridge, it's about being balanced within yourself and understanding that, pursue your passion, identify your dharma, and that might be heavily skewed in one tire, but that is not at the detriment of developing the other tires. And so we've actually gone through our programs that we've created, and it just humbles me to realize like it's a continuous learning journey, and there's so much it's so rich. There's not a stop. There's no longer this like guru mentality or this like infallible mentality. It's like we're all human, we're all learning, and with that mentality we can have the vulnerability that's necessary to go deep. We can have the authenticity of the human experience and not present a facade of perfectionism that a lot of self-help brands may push out there. We're being truly raw in our evolution and our journey.
Yeah. And what we're finding is the deeper we go with ourselves and with clients, the more expansive you can then go on your vision for the world we want to co-create, like what your mission is in society, like understanding where that core desire comes from, how it got implanted there, if it's really authentic and your own, and what that looks like as the manifestation, as your doingness in society.
Yeah, another analogy is like a tree. A tree needs deeper roots in order to grow tall. And a lot of people are focused on the above surface, the tallness of the tree,
Yes.
and they're not focused on the deepness of the roots.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to grow without recognizing that they have to go deep first.
Love that. So good. We draw a similar analogy to the guests that come on the show, where there's that similar style of parsing their essence, and the algorithm continuously updates as you see more patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love how you also describe in your curricula that there's this what appears to be a 7 or so year period of the familial and tribal upbringing that yeah, there's there's so much there that is it, because that's really the root. So to get to that collectively as a focus is great, because then we start in the first 7 years with oneness and unique expression as the essence, rather than only all of the conditioning and separation and ego and all of those patterns. But yet, yes, there's also this process of well, there's nuances here, because there's many upbringings that happen around the world where it's these, in the first 7 years, these patterns don't even emerge, right? So that's the style of like future pedagogy around upbringing that's most exciting, at least for me, where much of these perverse patterns don't even emerge anymore, because then we end up being 20 or 30 or 40 or whatnot years old and going like, well, fuck, what happened in those first 7 years? Oh shit, now I have to do some deconditioning of my heart, fuck. And then, you know, that's also a whole thing. Oh shit, those first 2, 3, 4 decades I was being such an asshole because of this thing that happened when I was 3 years old, blah blah blah. Snooze. Like, that shit is old now. Like, let's move beyond that. Let's figure out the first 7 years properly so we don't have to do all this later stuff in the middle part of our lives.
And to be honest, from a spiritual perspective, that's where I feel a lot of our generation took on the Dharma to be put in these dysfunctional families to learn, because as a expression of oneness, we're here to bring everyone collectively to that. And so a lot of what you might call light workers or awakened people, I don't know what terminology you like to use, but we need to understand the dysfunction because we are oneness, and we don't understand separation unless we experience it in individual states and then collectively talk about it and go through it. And so
So good. So good.
yeah, and that's really what we see. And you're absolutely right. Like, these patterns are buried in our subconscious, and we go around thinking we're fine because we're focused on our conscious, but then all of a sudden we look at the fruit of our tree and we're like, this isn't what I want. There's something off. Or all these areas in my life are great, but this one area is off.
If you even have the awareness to know it's off. Sometimes you just pour more into the bucket or tire you're most familiar and comfortable with.
And it's like, look, we're here to live our fullest life, our fullest expression. And if one thing's off, that means everything's off in some aspect of it, because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So there's something for you in deep exploration of that area. So oftentimes we find clients resonate with wanting to find like that ideal romantic partner, that love relationship. And they might have other areas of their career really dialed in, but it's that one aspect that is so rich for their exploration and so challenging for their ego to let go and receive the feedback. And I can say, as in our dynamic, it's challenging every single day.
Every day.
It's like we're going to work and healing ourselves in a process of just sending an email.
Yeah.
Because it's clear, like that's the level of intentionality that we've put into this entity, this business. And the dynamic is so unique, and it's so rich. Like, I just want to send an email to confirm that this appointment is happening, but it opens up a 5-hour conversation that brings up patterns from my past, deep subconscious resistance and wounds, things on her side as well. And then we get through it, and then we clear it, and then we see it instantly manifest in how we can help others in that similar way.
Mm-hmm. What you don't heal from your first 7 years, you find messengers and lessons in your outer reality that mirror from outer to inner. So anything that's in there will transpire through your business or through your romantic relationship, through your friendships. Yeah,
because it's relationship. So you can have a relationship with another being, but you could also have a relationship to your company, to your work, relationship to your team, to working out. So we find so many interesting ways that our ego has self-defense mechanisms to essentially sublimate or take all their angst or issues in one topic that they don't want to deal with and apply it to another area. And especially with technologists and entrepreneurs, it could simply be that they want to give themselves validation, but they construct such a complex mapping of reality that they decide to create an entire business around that unmet need that they don't give themselves. And so it's about recognizing what your needs are and recognizing how to fulfill them in a healthy way. So that way, when you go forward in a relationship, you can go forward with healthy interdependence. When you go forward with the business, you can create a business that's truly a business and not necessarily an abstraction of your ego that you're applying to it, which egomaniacal leaders in technology, there's ample data points of that. And then also investors as well. So it transpires to investors as well. So what we do is we say, regardless of the role you're playing in the awakening of humanity, let's first make sure that you are self-sufficient, that you are fulfilling your needs, that you have clear boundaries and ways to operate. Because without that, you might get out of your lane. You might overstep in what role it is that you are here to play.
You may get sucked into someone else's project, someone else's mission. So aligned with what the purpose is, but not exactly on your terms and not exactly in the role that you want to be playing. And not with the amount of responsibility that you want in the pursuit of it.
Yeah, so case in point, I was basically in taking a bath and downloaded what this secular enlightened ecosystem looks like. And it's like, that's great. And then I keep talking about it, like, this is there, and then this is there, and then this is there. See, here's the data point. Here's this futurist talking about this. And after a while, Victoria was like, okay, but what's your role in it? And that was so challenging for me because
like, there's a lot to do for one person.
yeah, and a lot of responsibility. That was the other caveat, because my mind could think about it. Oh, I could do this. I do it naturally. But like, what is it that you're responsible for, that you want to take responsibility for? Well, I want to take responsibility for the whole thing.
Yeah, what do you want to opt into? That's the truest expression of you.
And that was the core. It was like, what is the expression of me, and what is it that my heart wants? And so that's what unraveled the pursuit to tap into my heart, the pursuit to repair the trauma, and the pursuit to integrate and activate my full being, which is a lot of the DNA of what our journey is with Faces of the Future and the Fundamentals program.
Yeah, this is really resonant. As though we come in with the intention to go through said crazy 7-year intro, so that when we're 30 and quite aware of having healed and integrated and transcended through that way we can turn around and implement the proper frameworks and protocols for non-separation and for non-conditioning and for non-ego for the 2020s and 2030s babies that are popped into the world. It's awesome. So, I also really enjoy an example, probably for you, beautiful person listening, of the car analogy with the tires. This is probably very relatable for you guys. So, it really does feel like sometimes that we're going through this process of, shit, I gotta fill more air into this tire. Shit, that one's overinflated. And you're getting these catalysts that are this mirror from the outside world. And so this is why, like, if you haven't done that little bit of work with your family, it's going to show up somewhere. Mm-hmm. As a reflection from one of your family members or from a friend or from in your business, it'll show up. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, if you have this little egoic twist or distortion of an unmet need that you feel like you have some sort of unworthiness or that you need a substance or a relationship or an experience or whatever in order to feel validated, that's going to show up.
Big mission even.
Oh, a big mission. Yeah, that was another one, is look at me with all of my concepts and all of my projects and all of my, I don't know who I am at all, but look at all of this. Look at all my accounts and look at all my, my toys, my cars, my houses. Yeah. So, yeah, it shows up in all of these different ways in our reality, being mirrored to us, that we have a process of turning on the light of awareness on that specific area to love it, accept it, heal it, integrate it, transcend it. Mm-hmm. And I love that because the tire analogy is really relatable for people. Maybe there's some other really strong relatable examples with the tire analogy that you can share with us, because that also seems to be what pretty much happens in the teenage and in these 20s and usually even into the 30s is that we have this like, oh shit, like this one's a little deflated or overinflated and I'm gonna jump at and then for most people it's that the spiritual tire is taking a shit their whole life and there's no feelings of oneness whatsoever their whole life.
Right.
They're just stuck in a bubble reality around their head the whole time.
Yes.
No heart, no gut, no emotion, no feeling, just intellectual concept to concept.
Mm-hmm.
So the spiritual tire for most people is taking a shit. And then at some point there's some sort of insane, chaotic, traumatic event. Oh, spiritual tire. Okay. And then that happens.
That was like my car accident experience I
Yes.
shared.
Yes, exactly.
When you're not paying attention to the signs as they're coming, and then that jarring experience that forces you to look within.
Yes, we call it the drill sergeant of awakening is suffering. Just whap.
Yes.
And so that's a classic one is the spiritual depletion. And then, so physical, mental, emotional, walk us maybe through some of the common depletions or common because I was just coming up that there may be a common one of when you meet like really hyper emotional people that just have no idea of what they're putting into the field because they're just so emotional. Like everything just sends them into a discursive pattern of thinking and emotions that then radiates into the field uncontrollably. So that might be an overinflated emotional tire. Walk us through some of these examples.
Yeah, you totally got it. So I'll start from my own experience because that's what I've learned is like the best way for me to speak from truth is my authentic experience. So for me, I had the same thing of no spiritual tire, and then boom, all of a sudden I did this program.
It was like
and just like more like right, but everything was a spiritual thing, and I was spiritually bypassing and like, oh, love and light, oh, don't worry, money doesn't matter, you know, oh, don't worry, it'll all work out, like, oh, you're mad, well, love and light, you know, and like, oh, what should we do today? Well, let me tap into the quantum field and figure that out, you know. And so it's a bit comedic because of how obvious it is that that's disconnected from reality. But that's a prime example. Is a lot of people, or there are a population that is like the solution to everything is spiritual. The solution to everything is just meditate or just be in love and light and namaste. And that's a prime example that you see out there in the spiritual world.
So that's an overinflated spiritual tire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. And you want to take another one?
Sure. I guess the overinflated mental tire I can speak to. Kind of like rationalizing experiences you've been through, or theoretically why something would make someone mad, even though they've encountered it, but they haven't fully embodied it and felt the emotions in their body. That emotion gets trapped in there and stuck, and you're disconnected from it. And I was disconnected from it a long time. And you try to intellectualize what is happening to you, and you can explain it, and you explain why something gets you mad, and it's every time you explain it, it gets you madder, and it's like that thinking feeling loop that you were talking about. But you don't actually process the emotion. You just work yourself up to remind yourself of the story, of the narrative, and it's like your mind really anchored in that neural pathway. It's been hardwired, and every single time it's like this thought precedes that thought, and you reinforce the pattern over and over and over again instead of sitting with the feeling. Why do I feel this way? What triggered me? Why might I feel that way? Okay, what do I do about this feeling? How can I go and blow off this steam or this anger? How can I assert to somebody in a respectful way of my own needs and their own needs why something upset me, instead of like burying it and shoving it back down? We get sent to our rooms all the time when we're little, and we don't know what to do at that time. Sometimes we don't know how to process the experience that just happened. And depending on like parental styles, if they're there for you or if they're not there for you, it's like, hey kid, go fend for yourself. Sometimes, you know, not given the proper tools to learn how to unload, unpackage, disentangle all the emotions. Like, we just remember the trauma. It's a memory. It gets buried in. And every time you recall the memory, the same emotions come up without resolution. And you remember it just as if it was yesterday, 20 years later. It's crazy.
Yeah, another example of an inflated mental tire is dating in New York City for me. Was like, you go to a date and it's like, let me just read your resume. Oh, where do you live? What do you do? Where did you go to school? What's your job?
Yeah.
Or colleagues of mine who are really unhappy at their company or their business or their current situation.
Like decisions that sound good on paper.
Yeah, but they rationalize, well,
Yeah.
life is horrible, but I just have to stay at this job for 5 more years, and then 5 more years I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then that helps this, and then...
They have everything mapped out
Yeah.
for the next like 20 years of their life.
Yeah.
And they justify the reasons why this is a great idea, like reconvincing themselves.
Yeah. Or taking like news at face value and like, well, yeah, this makes sense because this, and not checking in with how they actually feel about the
feel about it,
headline
yeah.
or about the news. Or computer scientists are a population where it might be more prevalent of when there's a group, it's almost like an egoic battle of who can outthink the other person and can put the most mental thing, when ultimately they most likely want connection and appreciation and validation and a good time, but it ends up being this battle of like this coding thing versus that coding thing. It is another example of mental.
Wow. So that also relates to this in biology, signaling theory.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the peacock tails out, you know, it's like, look at my lattice
Look
work
at
of
my
concepts.
plumage.
Yeah.
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 And whereas in reality, just by slowing down the field dynamic itself, can there be very profound revelations for the entirety of everyone that's present there, just by slowing it down. So I've noticed that so much these last couple of years is that the more that we just the less that actually is evolved and awakened in that. And then the more that you just go, I'm alive, I exist, I am, you are, we are, this is. And just that little drop just creates so much space. You know, another way to think about that for our, especially for maybe viewers that are less familiar with lots of spirituality, but there's a really good tie-in here with neuroscience as well, where it's like having an empty room is when you breathe and you just turn the field down a bit, and then it's like all of this space in the room. No neurological firing. Just then all of the stuff in the room. The stuff is like that signaling theory of concepts and all the mental masturbation and all that type of stuff, where it's only things. It's only, there's a book there, there's a table there, there's a backpack there, there's water there, there's shoes there, there's pillows there, there's wood floor there, there's a book there. It's like, what is going on? It's like a panic attack of sorts.
Yeah, you know, what as you're saying it, what it actually reminds me of is when I used to go to like nightclubs. Like there's so much stimulation, so much noise, and then you go to the bathroom and you close the door and it's quiet and you're like, whoa. And then it's like, do I go back out there? You open the door and you're like, oh, okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's what that reminded me of. Yeah.
And if we just use that analogy to recognize, if we sort of look at the different tires on our car, and we recognize, well, is there a nightclub style dynamic going on in any of my car tires?
Mm-hmm.
And
Analysis paralysis. The overinflation of the mental tire. Yeah.
Should I potentially just go into the bathroom in some
and that's
of
what
the
meditation is,
Yeah.
right? Because you intentionally shut everything out, and all of a sudden your mind's going 1,000 thoughts per second. That's a clear sign that you normally exist in a nightclub 24/7. So good luck actually being able to assess who you are, what
Yeah.
tires are inflated.
There's a nightclub going on in here. A lot of discursive tabs open.
And that's the process of like a meditation is clearing out the nightclub so you actually have space to think. And that's a lot of what we provide in our facilitation is we help create that empty space or that space for you to actually analyze and assess the tires. Because it could be that your tires are being stomped on by a bunch of drunk partygoers, and you got to clear them out of the room to actually see and assess. And
Yes. And if you've ever been to the club after the club closes, also the club's gone, all the people are gone, all the lights are on in the club, and it's just the space. And there's some like trash on the ground and stuff, and
Yeah.
then you go out and you're like, okay, well, it's time to clean up the floor and stuff like. So just like, these are good. This is a good analogy. Like this nightclub one's quite interesting.
Time to clear the energetic imprint of all the people and the things that my mind is attached to and being pulled in different directions. Time to call that energy back to you.
Yeah, and all those thoughts actually imprint your body from a biological perspective, because we're primarily water, and water holds memory. And so you can look at it from neural wiring and how fast your brain waves are, but you can also look at it from a water memory perspective of all those thoughts imprint you. And so your vehicle has nightclub goers in it. And so you have to actually cleanse it. And so part of what we do is really focus on like replenishing your body with pure water, so that way it's like taking a mop on the floor. Like you gotta mop off all the spilled drinks that are there to be able to sit down and reflect. And so there is a physical aspect to what we do with clients as well when they see us in person. And so just as you're saying, it's all four tires. Our procedure, our process and program isn't just one tire. It's all four tires, and when they're all in balance, they make the fifth, which is your beingness. And so
Awesome.
it's a great way to assess what you're being and look at your external world as how you're showing up and seeing perhaps where there might be some issues with tires.
So the beingness is sort of like the dash in a sense of the car, like it's kind of like your presence.
Your metaphysical vitals.
Metaphysical vitals, yeah, that's great.
Of the vehicle.
That's great. And so you get the more the more your beingness is awake, aware, presence, radiating love, oneness, service, honor, that the more that the tires, the dash is showing that all is well, there's harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And then when a dissonance shows up, then there's beep beep beep, like look at like the tire.
Yes.
And it requires incredible surrender to receive that, because it could simply be an ignoring of the message and the signal as well. So it's about building that awareness practice and also the surrendering practice of receiving that signal, so that way you get it when it's a small sign, not when it's a big car accident.
A tiny misalignment. Yeah. Time to rotate your tires. Focus on these now.
Yeah, and what else?
So good. I'm just loving this. It's a great play. So good. Another good, like, just a simple way to maybe go from the loud ass nightclub to the bathroom for a moment to close the door is just to take a breath. like even that just
Yeah, and if I might interject, a breath
Please.
isn't just the breath in, it's the space between the breath in and the breath out, and the breath out, and the space between the breath out and the breath in. So it's actually 4 parts to the breath. So sometimes people, I've seen and coached where I might take a deep breath because you're like kind of need it. They go, and they think that's the breath. No, that's the breath in. The breath is 4 parts. And actually, there's incredible enlightenment potential, consciousness growing potential in the space between the breath in and the breath out. And that's why box breathing is so powerful physiologically, and why it's trained to like the Marines and such, because that breath is so important. So I just want to add that caveat just in case. Like,
yes.
it's not the breathe. No, that's not a breath. It's
and the box is the
breathe
in, hold, out, hold,
Pause, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in. So use that little box method to just go into the bathroom in the nightclub for a bit and just like what's going on? Like what's going on? Like, was there something that happened in my life in the last like hour that just went by so fast that I didn't get a chance to reflect on well, but that was clearly some sort of a signal or catalyst for me. Like the dash light showed up for one of the tires, but then it was all going by so fast that that I had to go into the bathroom for a bit to actually be able to analyze what the dash light was saying about the specific thing.
Yeah, like what's off in my energetic field, because that's what it creates. It's your resonance. It's how you show up. It's your vibration, and that means everything in your manifestation potential. That's what you magnetize things to you with your beingness.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So basically, the sum of spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental shows up as beingness, and then the beingness can be in, we've discussed this as like light dispersion, so you get the visible light spectrum, and it also mirrors the chakras. And so you may be showing up at a yellow level, maybe your beingness is showing up at a green level with the heart chakra. And so the more that your beingness is showing up at these higher densities, these higher frequencies of love, light, awareness, that's the more that you gravitate that feedback loops into your life. So that's great, because it's like an electromagnetic field resonance of vibration. It's so important. So you're literally, your beingness, the status of your vehicle, is precisely what is electromagnetizing everything in your reality. It's so good.
Absolutely.
And like that's a core thing for the clients for in the curricula, is like just that vigilance with that whole electromagnetic field process, and viewing all its nuances and subtleties, and how it is signaling certain aspects to your beingness.
And having good boundaries around your beingness.
Because what we all have, or people we work with, we're finding they have incredible superhero abilities.
Yes.
And powers that society doesn't know what to do with and hasn't been rewarded, or it's just our generation and the future generations just have these inherent abilities that are latent inside. You can look at DNA, and maybe it's epigenetics, it's waiting for the right environmental context, but you can't. There's a massive challenge being like the shape of a star if the entire world only understands the shape of circles and squares. So if we're going to be the bridge, the change makers, to live life as a star, we have to be very clear that we are stars. So that way, when other people's projections of us are like, no, you're a square, you're a circle, you're a square, so you can stand in your centeredness and be able to navigate knowing full well that you are a star. And that's where the boundaries come in. Because for our journeys in our spiritual gifts and abilities, or whatever you want to call these abilities, has been that. It's been, but you're crazy. You don't know it. It's only given to you by this person. It's only given to you in this context. You can't go out and do it outside of this context. And so it's about acknowledging who we are and building a relationship with those points on the star. And if we don't have clarity of our center, clarity of our boundaries, we will get sanded down into a square or a circle.
By somebody else.
Yeah, that's been a core, even still over the last 4 years, of just being really driven by polymath, having learned a lot about a lot of different things and being really excited about the synthesis of science and spirituality and all this type of stuff. And it'd be so interesting. People would always want to be, he's a liberal or he's a conservative or whatever. That's the little square and circle bullshit. Or the science and spirituality thing, similar thing, square or circle. Tell me which one. You're one of the two. And then, blue or red. And then whenever you're star, or whenever you're purple, or whenever you're some sort of one of those incomprehensible geometric things that is you can't put a name to, and then people because how do I label you?
How does this fit into my reality?
Fit into my reality. Yes.
How does it fit into my framework?
God, it's so freeing. It's so liberating. That's one of the most liberating things is you can't nail me down. I am the fucking freedom itself. You can't nail me down. And that's so freeing. And then there's the simultaneity with that. There is some sort of an actual apparent boundary of my own back. And so I do go out and stretch my back. And so there's these boundaries within boundlessness. And so that's the hilarity of the game, is that there are these apparent boundaries here within boundlessness, because there's no there is an apparent distinction, but then it's also no distinction, all just energy. Ha ha.
Yeah, I love
funny game this is.
I love what you're saying about the boundaryless boundlessness. Was that it?
The boundaries in
the boundlessness. Sorry. Yeah. Because if we come from oneness and we're all expressions of source, we are each unique expressions of source. Otherwise, we would just merge right into each other in the primordial goo again. And what's the point of coming here and learning our lessons and becoming who we are and doing this path of self-discovery, inner work, and seeing what lights up your heart and pursuing that as a mission-driven business. And
exactly. And as you're saying, you can't nail me down. So my shorthand will get you very close to truth. And that's the point, is that I don't need to prove truth. I just have to, our role is to help facilitate your own journey to it. So if you want to nail me down, meet me as the fully expressed version of you in the present moment with the fully expressed version of me. And then let's see. Good luck. I'll see you there. Yeah. And then that at least allows people who are trying to label you to give them a pathway versus you can't do it. It's okay, yeah, here's the little tidbit. There's a great lesson in I think it's David Deida, the book of what is
The Way of the Superior?
Yeah, The Way of the Superior Man. The question is sometimes in men or in women, there's this desire to have multiple lovers. And so what he says is just fully, completely satisfy one woman or one lover. And then once that happens, then you can consider a second one. Because I guarantee you will never be able to fully satisfy that other lover. And so that is a beautiful shorthand to help people on their way. So just like you're saying, you can't nail me down. It's like, if you want to try to nail me down, meet me as the fully expressed version of yourself in the present moment with me. And because in your journey to get there, you'll realize that the nailing down is like a silly thing to try to do.
And to play on this a little further, it seems as though the way to actually be able to emerge back into the field at the highest level of honor and service and compassion as possible, it requires, in a sense, to take all conditioning and separation and ego and identity as the costume and completely dissolve it into the field itself, into that soup, into that oneness, into that energy, and then re-emerge from the nothingness as what this firework of source is. Because then you've traversed the entirety of what you are. And then you can serve the field purely. And so that's one of the core things that seems to be really important, is like becoming really comfortable with nothingness, becoming really comfortable with emptiness, becoming really comfortable with the costume being just an appearance that appears and disappears, and that in that process it actually makes you the sun. It makes you more purely the sun, able to actually radiate and illuminate the field without attachment, without fixation, without need to be seen or validated, just purely, just in honor. And this would look like, for like a normal scenario, this would look like when you're sitting with a friend and that your emptiness would look something like being totally comfortable with not needing to insert something into the space, but rather allowing what your friend is saying to be heard purely, genuinely, presently, authentically. And then, when your friend finishes saying what they say, that then you lovingly, you can just speak through your glance. You don't even need a word. Like, your eyes themselves non-verbally can just emit love and radiance and warmth. And like, the more that you hear like, man, you're really good at listening, or that you really, you really saw me, or what, like those, the more that like you hear that, the better you're doing at being able to hold space authentically, genuinely, all this type of stuff. But then also it's the quality of your question or your insight that you reflect back at them, that then allows also a deeper inquisitive process into their own. How do you guys feel about that, traversing the entire spectrum into that nothingness or into that emptiness, into that oneness that then enables you to reemerge in the field as pure?
How do we feel about it, or what did it look like?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, that was so eloquently
Yeah.
put, what you said. I just have to
let it land, you're saying.
Yeah, because it's that is a great litmus test of how you're doing on the consciousness journey. Is, are you able to fully be present with another, to listen and receive? That's like, well, if you have a nightclub going on in your head, you're not going to be present, and you're going to be a really horrible friend, kind of a thing. You're going to be thinking about, what do I say next, or what about dinner, what about this or that object, oh, that person's cute, da, 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 da. Right? So that presence is a great practical example. And then, based on your own wisdom and conscious journey, how can you then provide that reflection, that question? And that's something that Victoria is so remarkable at. And I just want to say, your analogy is just absolutely just amazing. I love it.
Thanks, fam.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, you guys too. We've been on fire since we met. It's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to the question. Yeah. How do we feel? So we take people into the quantum field.
Yeah. What we did essentially is we unplugged. Well, I guess I'll speak for myself. Unplugged from reality, from society, stripping away the job, getting rid of the apartment in Brooklyn, all the stuff, selling off all the things, going to India, firewalking on coal, all that stuff, meditating all day, doing the powers of the third eye stuff, but then coming back and seeing, how do I integrate back into society? I can't connect with my nursing people. I can't connect with my Brooklyn people, my family people. They don't understand this journey I just went on. And is this journey necessary for people looking to expand their consciousness and their awareness? Can you simply go on a safe, grounded, expansive approach with 2 skilled guide facilitators who have taken out some of the guesswork for you, possibly, and it doesn't destabilize you, perhaps like a plant medicine journey would, that pries open the heart and you extract that wisdom and that kernel, that seed of what you want to plant. But it also, there's quite an integration that happens after that. So how can we smooth out the integration process? How do we help them operate with all these newfound understandings with the upgraded consciousness? How do we help them reemerge into society as who they're being, now who they're becoming, who they are right now? How do they do it now?
Yeah, and everyone has their own unique journey. And so we're specifically targeting those people who are like, hey, we want a little more grounded, more controlled approach than doing like a plant-based journey, which has its purpose. Mm-hmm. So that's really where we connected in terms of society. And that integration piece is like so key that Victoria is mentioning, because at a lot of conferences or events in the business world, like I was at the US Africa Summit and doing lots of things and talking to big leaders. And first time I'm there, I'm very, bright eyed, like, wow, this is all amazing. We're going to make a change in the world. And this older gentleman just looked at me. He's like, nah, it's just for the headlines. We're all going to go back to our jobs on Monday and nothing's going to change. And how that's related to the spiritual journey and the awakened journey is the integration. You have this but there's no integration follow through on it. And so what we've done is it's almost like we've titrated your awakening. We've titrated your expansion, so that way you can maintain a little more control on the massive shift. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about we're shifting the consciousness of the planet, there is some form of that to consider the implications of a massive awakening happening in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of individuals' lives that are changing, or people who are almost quote unquote left behind when that shift happens, because it's happening. I don't know when, but it's happening. It's very clear. So there will be people who are like, hey, what about me? How do I get there? Right now, we're focused on people who are like, I want to be a leader in it and I want to create major infrastructure in it. But ultimately, full circle, it'll be people like, help me get there. And I don't necessarily know if my physiology could actually handle a plant-based journey, or numerous other reasons why certain modalities aren't right for them. So that's been part of the ethos of what's come through in our channels, in our sessions as well.
And it doesn't have to look as reclusive as ours did.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, there was a lot of challenge that I went through trying to reintegrate into society. Massive trauma, massive dissonance with my reality, with people who I connect with, because it was like almost instantaneous unplugging. And if it's a destination we're all going to together eventually, then maybe rethinking the approach for how we can all get there is really one of the things this addresses.
I think Atlas beautifully said the other day, commenting on, I forget what question it was, but it was like titrated surrender. Controlled surrender.
Yeah. And for many of us, that is basically what has, in a sense, happened. There's a lot of non-dual teachers that will just say that there was an apparent contraction in energy, and then there was an apparent liberation in energy. And then, like, that's all they'll say. And they'll kind of, like, keep bringing it back to you're already the wholeness, you're already it, you're already the wholeness, you're already it. And then the question from the seeker, from that which it feels like it's separate, is perpetually, but I don't feel whole. Why do I not feel whole? What do I do? And so this is the game that some of these seekers that feel separate play with these non-dual teachers, and it's kind of funny, because there's so much truth in what is being said by the non-dual teacher, by the message, and yet there's also what you could say is like the simultaneity, where you could, in a sense, provide a tiny insight into what had happened in your process that apparently happened as a process where you went from a contracted feeling of separation and seeking to a liberated, expansive feeling of freedom and wholeness. And so then you could drop a little insight for that which feels separate. And so then there's some sort of a titration of awakening or of remembering after forgetting 7 years and more. So it seems to be really critical for people to recognize that there is both no journey, because you're already whole, and yet there is the appearance of some sort of a journey. And then
what comes to me on that is a visual, and it's a symphony. Life is a symphony, and those non-dual teachers are kind of like the big gong, like dong, that gets banged like every fourth or eighth chord or whatever it's called, bar, fourth or eighth bar. Like, it's important, we got to come back to that, but there's so much that happens in the space in between that we're not addressing or expressing or appreciating, which is like, maybe you have the cello come in, maybe you have the bongos, maybe you have the piano or the flute come in, and those are important pieces to the human experience as well, because when I've basically disappeared into the ether, into the Akashic, beyond the Akashic, whatever you want to call it, the quantum field, it gets lonely. And I've talked to several people who have done this before. It's like, what do you do once you're on the mountain? Well, you come back down the mountain because you want more people to have fun with you. And we're seeing this happen in society in terms of technological adoption. Is like, it requires a certain level of consciousness to be able to keep up with the technology and with how it replicates itself in societal structures. And when you talk about being able to download, channel certain technologies that are really fun and cool to play with, the question is, from a responsible perspective, is humanity ready for it? And the ethics of technology comes up, and the conversation of AI, of mass like bombs and nuclear warfare comes up, of, is our consciousness ready for it? Are we ready to have the technology to instantly manifest anything you want? Well, if you're constantly thinking about 100 different things, that is actually like a death sentence, because of all the thought. Like, if everything you thought manifested, oh my gosh, you'd be dead. And that's one of the lessons that they teach you, is like the Kalpataru tree is one of the things that our teacher taught, is, sit under the Kalpataru tree, and any wish you want, or anything you think of, will come true. So he's like, I want jewels. Oh my gosh. And jewels appeared. Oh, I want gold. Oh my gosh. Gold appeared. And then he thought, oh my gosh, what if someone comes and tries to...
What if a tiger comes and tries to eat me?
And then
there came a tiger.
Yeah, I love that one. That's such a good one. I love that. God, that one little fearful thought comes and then it manifests, and then bye-bye.
Yeah.
That's great.
Exactly. So consciousness almost has like a...
Or there's that other part to it too, where it's like, now you need, for all your diamonds and gold, you need a place to store it safely. You need guards to...
Yeah, that's the story of like the fisherman down in Mexico, where the young MBA, comes and is like, hey, you do so well. There's so many fish here. Why don't you take a loan or take investors to grow your business, and then you could have many boats. And it's like, why would I do that? If I have many boats, I have to hire many people. And then I have the people who invested in my company I have to deal with. And then I have to deal with them, and then I have to deal with running a company. And I don't want to run a company. I just want to fish and be with my family.
And before you know it, you're in your head and out of your heart about why you did it in the first place.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I take money. I don't get to spend time with my family. Why would I do that? That's what my heart wants. I like fishing. I don't want to run a company. I want to be a fisherman. So your idea of expansion actually is like repulsive, because you're not seeing the implications of this tool you have, which is your mind, and expanding it. Like, business is a technology in and of itself, and there's like a spiritual component to it as well, and a metaphysical component. But that's something that, as an MBA myself, I love talking about, is that it's a technology, and that there is a spiritual aspect to that technology that is very often ignored. And it goes back to the origination of
the thought current that conceived the business, when it was at ideation, at conception, from what vibration or from what unfulfilled need it was coming from. And what does that person's wholeness or lack of wholeness who created said entity, how does that impact the growth and scaling and expansion and permeation into our society? Has that person done the shadow work and understood all the implications of what this can do?
And if not, it manifests in different ways in terms of how it grows or how it fails, what the company culture is like, the hiring policies. It shows up in small ways that we really work with them at but pre-inception of idea or pre-receiving of their dharma, so that way they do the shadow work. So it's like, hey, maybe you just need to like heal with your mom, which is a very challenging topic for many people, but tell your mom you love her, like work through the connection issue before you decide to build a company that essentially you're building to try to meet that unmet need that your mom never gave you.
And we started out with the Foundry process, like taking a business from ideation to basically grounding it into this dimension as a business venture, right? And then we had to take a few steps backwards and create this kind of precursor. It's like, where did that seed come from? Is this the right seed you're planting for you? What space did it come from? What unresolved issues might there be that will manifest and permeate throughout the business? So we had to reverse engineer and work backwards and solve for some of the issues that founders encounter on their entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, because for me, the Foundry process was like, oh my gosh, I have this psychoanalytic ecosystem idea in my head. Okay, well, how do I move forward on it? So this process was kind of birthed with that. And individuals who receive unique channels or very expansive channels that are very out there, very future oriented, how do you ground it into the present moment to be like, okay, well, we need one project manager and we need one, back-end coder and this and that. No, well, what we could do is we could do the NFT and then we could attach it with this and this and that and that. And then we could use the gematria of this and that. It's like, okay, like your ideas are beautiful. And if that is your dharma, awesome. We need to ground that. And that was the process. But then what we saw was that the individual had to go through a process before being able to fully steward that idea forward.
Introspection, elevating vibration, tuning your vessel. Because if this is a massive multidimensional idea, you want to make sure you're tuned to carry its resonance.
Perfect. Yeah, especially when we're looking at Fortune 500 CEOs, or we're looking at the 2,200 billionaires on the planet, 225,000 ultra high net worth on the planet, that's 30 million or more in US dollars in assets, the presidents, all the attendees at the General Assembly, United Nations, the 535 people in the United States Congress. So you look at all these little pockets of people that are probably nearly representing like 7 billion or something people, probably. And then there's all the interpenetration and interweaving of somebody that does something with Amazon, and then also as part of the U.S. So there's the Congress one and the Amazon one, and then there's also and then Jeff Bezos being a billionaire, so there's that part to it as well. And so now you're just weaving all of this complexity, and so you're wondering, well, this big swath of the most influential people, like, what is their level of consciousness, or like, are they entering into the fields from a place of something that happened when they were 3 years old, then they're still seeking validation or worthiness, an unhealed trauma? Is it, and how to make it so that this style of understanding our inner scape becomes the core of what is talked about at the UN General Assembly or at the Davos World Economic Forum, because this is it. Like, this is the thing. I haven't been able to find anything else that's the thing as much as this. Like, diving inwards with earnestness, honor, integrity, love, compassion for yourself and for the world is the best thing that you can possibly do. And so on, like, the individual level, with doing work with both people that may have businesses, may not have businesses, small businesses, medium businesses, good stuff. Very good. Grassroots, very good. Very important. Grassroots, very important. Also, the most impactful top-down influence is also very, very, very important. Like, getting to that, so crucial.
Yeah, you're so on point. Like, as I said, I grew up in the newspaper industry, and our family owned a major newspaper in Beverly Hills. And to your point, there are billionaires wanting the publisher of the newspaper to sit at their table because they knew that would mean a photo on the front page. And everyone invited the publisher to the event because they wanted the picture. And so you have these titans of industry asking for the publisher to be there, and it became almost a social thing of, oh, did you see that my photo was on the front page of the paper? So I took that same principle and applied it to the U.S. Africa Summit. I put together a magazine that had a beautiful picture of each one of the African presidents, beautiful thing written about them, and ended up going there. They asked for a second run of it. I had like a $500 budget and an incredible team, but I show up there and everyone wants it. Their presidents asking for more copies of it, or president delegates asking for more copies of it because they want to give it to their friends because it says something nice about them. Yeah. And that led me to actually have meetings with certain African countries' heads of commerce and marketing because they wanted something written nice about their country. And it's the same principle: beautiful picture, nice words, power of positivity. And this was before I had gone through any form of an awakening journey. And I'm like, what the heck did I just walk into? The same principle that applies to like a Beverly Hills housewife is the same motivating factor that applies to heads of state. And that to me was just an astonishing factor. And it proves to your point, it goes to your point of like, therefore healing yourself is the most important thing. Going inside is the most important thing, as well as not just digging out the trauma, which sometimes these programs might just focus on. Heal your past. No, create your future. And part of creating your future is healing your past. The end goal is not to heal your past. The end goal is to create your future. And that gives you...
your new narrative.
That gives you the motivation to heal from a positive aspect, because I know that that's something that you've journeyed with pretty intensely.
Yeah, I was doing endless shadow work, going in, burning down the forest, pulling out the weeds, never planting any seeds, not understanding like what was the purpose I was doing it all for. So it can be a spiritual trap on the path where you go in and you just constantly pick at yourself. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy enough. I'm not, nobody cares about what I have to say. Who am I to go and talk about these topics? Anything like that, without actually creating something and writing the new narrative, overwriting the old beliefs, reprogramming. What's your why?
Yep.
Going within, seeing what drives you, what propels you to want to create this, what excites you and what lights you up.
I love how you guys have been using that throughout our conversation of what lights you up. You know, what's in your highest excitement? What are you blueprinted for?
Mm-hmm.
So exciting. What's your calling? What's your North Star? Love these. It's very powerful. But it's not coming from a place of lack. That's the core thing. Like my actualization is not coming from a place of unwholeness or unworthiness. It's kind of like a flower that just naturally blossoms to the sun and emits an aroma, and it's not like we just got to be very careful with why, because it can be because it plays into that mystery that we were talking about a couple nights ago, you know, which is very important. It's very, very important. Like, to sort of, in that titrated surrender, like letting go, like let go. Ease your way into like the flower. Like the flower doesn't have a little fucking mind on top of it that's going, you know, type thing. So, like, careful with that. Like, so there's like a coming from wholeness. You know, what are you blueprinted for? What's your unique artistic expression, etc.? Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful because we're also that which is beautifully artistically expressing itself via this dance. And so to also be like nothingness is also like emptiness is empty. Like, don't be drunk on emptiness. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I found is that when it comes to like a spiritual concept of dharma, regardless of whether you're coming from a place of lack or wholeness, you'll at least have some understanding of the general concept of what your dharma is. It may be filled in with a lot of the trauma and the incompletion and the lack, but it at least is a starting point that as you do the inner work, it clarifies more and more what that dharma is.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to just sit there from an empty place before pursuing something. It's just a recognition that as you do the inner work, the dharma that you're pursuing gets clarified and will evolve at the level of consciousness that you are at. And the traumas and triggers or subconscious programming, negative beliefs that you have are being projected onto what you perceive that dharma is. But as you said, like, get on the horse and then I can help you with riding a horse. Unless you get on the horse, like, that's the first step. So acknowledge and appreciate this idea of a concept of dharma, because that to me is like the highest spiritual ideal of your doingness. And so you're doing it from the level at your beingness, and we can help you refine and go through the evolutionary process of your beingness, and that will translate to the evolution of your doingness. But get on the horse and start from that perspective.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Gosh, just love that. That's so good. And I love the car analogy with the tires and the beingness being there. And I love that. Just so good. So good. Just really, really well done in general. First podcast. Pretty fucking good.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Thank you.
That was really good.
You're a great host. Yeah, we resonate. I mean,
Yeah.
it is that which comes through us. That's why we don't call ourselves coaches really or teachers. We're facilitators. Like there are certain roles where we play teachers, certain roles where we play coaches, but ultimately we're facilitating. We're facilitating the divine to come through based on the level of resonance of this container that you've created. So this is equally a representation of your profundity, your profoundness,
Yes.
your depth. Because what we realize is that we're essentially language architects to help bring people to source based on their comprehension of it. And so it could be as simple as talking about 1 + 1 is 2, or it could go to this depth and this level, and that's just an acknowledgement of who you are, the intention of what it is that you're doing, and the intentionality of your viewers and why they're watching you.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for
Yeah.
being you and watching.
The deeper the field coherence, the heart resonance that's present, the deeper we can go, the quicker we can unlock and reveal things and co-create.
Damn, that was really good too, with like really just kind of being a language architect in a sense as you facilitate people's journey to unite with source, with what they are. That's yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because
And that
ultimately
goes to the first point that you guys mentioned with how your intake is vibrationally, you're parsing the essence and then serving it uniquely to each one.
Yeah, and we're solving the inherent separation that language is.
Totally. And you'll notice that some of these greatest poets and mystics and stuff, they talk about just how much we overuse words and how so much love is lost with that overuse of words. Like, you just go outside into nature and just be quiet. Quiet the mind and just feel from your heart. Look at this. It's a fucking miracle, baby.
Yeah, Arrival, the movie Arrival really dives into like the separation of language and creating a unity language of beingness. Yeah.
Yes. This was so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your awakened presence.
You too.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Infinite love for you as well. Thank you. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Let us know how you feel about the episode. Any core insights, core takeaways, let us know. Also, like the video, helps the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Also, share the video with other people that you feel like this would positively resonate with and influence well. Also, check out the link in the bio below. So facesofthefuture.co, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Facesofthefuture.co. The link's in the bio below. And the batches that you intake they're not just batches. They're kind of any time people can come in. And then also the general length is about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be remote or in person in the LA area.
Yes.
Okay.
We do the 2-on-1 journeys, and then they join a group or our community, our pool.
Yeah, because we're not just going to upgrade your consciousness. We're going to make sure it's fully integrated, and we're going to help you navigate that path to self-realization, self-accountability, and everyone's on their unique journey, on their unique pace. And so one of the things that's important for us is to make sure that you feel fully supported and safe in this. It's not just a one shot and go kind of thing. And it's creating a community as well at that level of consciousness. So it is a beautiful series of things that you can experience with us.
Perfect. And then one of the things I was just coming up was that to weave these communities also together as well. Because what we're doing with the No Limit Society, what you guys are doing in Face of the Future, what every single one of these groups of awakened presence consciousness is doing to like weave into some like 1 million person festival in Africa in 2022 in the summer, something nuts. That would be so lit. We're gonna do that. It's beautiful.
It's more realistic than you might.
Oh, it's so coming.
Yeah.
It's so in the field. This whole collective's awakening. It's so dope.
Yeah,
It's so coming.
I'm glad you picked up on it.
Fuck yeah. Oh, this has been so warm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Infinite love. Talk to you soon. Peace.